All right, Shabbos, good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Iyar, an anonymous sponsorship dedicating all of the Sherman Drushos this month with Akar Satov to Hashem for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us and for Refuah Shlema for Devora, Leah, Bas Chaya, Rivka. May we always zochem Eretz Hashem to witness the imminent coming of Mashiach Mehera B'Yameinu. Our week of learning sponsors, Ari and Haley Lichterman, in memory of Haley's mother, Mrs. Linda Kotin, Zichron Lebracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. With that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, today's daf is Ayin Tes 79. And we are picking up on Ayin Chesam Beis 78b. Sorry, give me 1 second here. And we left off a little bit past the two das. We'll say actually right hahu d'amr lahu, which is 4 lines up from the bottom. So it says, if you remember, 2 lines up from before the lines get wide. Sorry about that. Right, 4 lines up from before the wide lines. A little bit of a difference. So remember again, the case that the Gemara was dealing with was a person goes ahead and I rent the donkey from Ruvain vehevrika. So then the Gemara had a machlokes. What is the definition of hivrika? So one opinion said that norisa means that the animal went blind, and Rava said avzekes. Avzekes means some type of, Rashi points out, like worms in the legs, some type of condition of the legs which would prevent the animal from walking. So the Gemara says, Hahu da'amar luhu, avzekes b'milsa de malka. So there was a guy, Gemara tells the story. There was a guy who came and said, there are avzekes. Now, interestingly enough, in this case over here, he says there's avzekes in the king's clothing. Now Rashi says, what does that mean? Avzekes b'milsa de malka, ra'isi ash, sha'ochal shirayim shal otzra melech. I saw moths. Now, what does that have to do with the Gemara? Because remember again, the Gemara defined hivrika as avzekes. Avzekes means, again, the Gemara the second opinion was some type of condition that deteriorates the animal. So now the Gemara is just going along with that idea to show you that avzekes means some type of deterioration. So the Gemara says there was a guy who showed up. He said, "I saw moths which go ahead and eat away at the king's clothing." Amrulei b'mai. Bimai, tell me, what did you see the moths by? Betali kesef or betali dov? Literally, again, did you see it by the silver garments or by the gold garments? Now, Rashi points out over here that it doesn't literally mean gold and silver. Rashi says clay kesef is clay pishtan, linen garments. Betali zav are woolen garments. Woolen garments. So did you see it by the linen garments or the woolen garments? So the Gemara says, Ikadamri. So some say the guy said, "Oh, I saw it by the silver garments. I saw it by the linen ones." V'katlu, and they killed the guy. Now what's the pshat? So apparently moths don't eat linen. Don't eat linen garments. So he was lying. So a guy lies about the king's clothing. What do? They execute him. Others say, no. He said that he saw by the woolen garments, and they let him go free. What does this have to do with anything? Nothing, except it's using the same words of avzekes. That's it, which means to deteriorate. Okay, the Gemara goes weiter. Shosha nasa sangaria, omer lechari shachal lefanecha. So it's actually an interesting case over here. So I go ahead and rent a donkey from Ruvain, and what happens? The donkey is subject to angaria. Now remember again, angaria means that it is conscripted into the king's service. That the king, again, we have a similar concept, I guess, of eminent domain, right? That the government could seize certain things but there is for general use. There's for general use. So here, the king has the right to go ahead and seize whatever he wants. So what did he do? He sometimes seizes animals. So let's say I rent a donkey from Ruvain, and again, the donkey is taken by the king. When I say by the king, by the army, by someone in the employ of the king. So now I go back to Ruvain and say, Ruvain, give me a new donkey. Ruvain says, not my problem. That's your mazel. That's your mazel. You have to go ahead and deal with this. So the Gemara says as follows: Amar Rav, lo shanu ela ba'angaria chozeres. So Rav says this is only, by the way, with what we call angaria chozeres. I will say, what's angaria chozeres? This is going to be ultimately, again, that we'll see this in just a moment, that sometimes they would take the animal, use it for a certain amount of time, and then return it. And this was the practice. So again, if we're talking about a situation where the donkey is going to be returned to me, then halacha l'maisa, that's where Ruvain, the owner, has the right to say, listen, deal with it until you get the animal back. However, aval angaria she'enu chazaris chayiv lamid lo chamar. But I will say, if it's the type of angaria where now the animal was taken and it is not going to be returned, so that is no different than an animal that died. And what happens when the animal dies? What happens when the animal dies? Halacha l'maisa, the owner is obligated to furnish a new animal. So an interesting distinction. Shmuel says no. Bein angaria chozeres, bein angaria she'enu chozeres. So Shmuel says no. The truth is, whether it's the type of angaria that's returned or not returned, that's not the determinant. Rather, again, listen to this. He says, "Im b'derech halicha nitla, omer lo harisha chalafanecha, ve'im la b'derech halicha nitla, chayiv lahamid lo chamar." So Shmuel makes the interesting distinction. Shmuel says, ultimately, again, how was it seized? So if the animal was seized in a way where, let's say I'm traveling north. And so what happens? So the animal goes ahead so now I'm traveling north, and on that same road, my animal is seized, let's say by the army. But I see the army is also traveling north. So the way this sometimes would work is, if I follow the army long enough, at a certain point in time, what's going to happen? They're going to release the animal. So Shmuel says, as long as the animal was seized and is traveling in the same direction that I'm going in, the owner doesn't have to furnish me with a new animal. If, let's say, I'm going north, the army seized my animal and they're going south, then it's as if the animal died, and the owner would be obligated to go ahead and furnish me a new animal. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, Gemara is Zekasha, Hasochar. So we'll say, Safan Machlok is Rav and Shmuel. So Meisvei, Hasochar, Sachamer Vivrika, if I rented a donkey and the donkey went blind, right? Oh, shenishtatito, or the donkey went crazy. Omer lo harisha chalafanecha. The owner says, Reuven says to me, listen, you're a problem. Not my problem. I gave you a perfectly good donkey. I'm so sorry now that the donkey lost its mind. I'm so sorry right now the donkey went blind. That's your mazel, not my problem. So the Gemara says, harish chalafanecha mesa. And I will say, now the logic over there also is because the animal is still technically usable for certain things. We'll discuss. In other words, you can get use out of the animal, maybe not the kind of use you wanted, but still some type of use. Conversely, Mesa, if the animal dies, Oshanasa Sangaria, or the animal was conscripted into the government service, so Chayav Lahamid Lo Chamar. At that point again, so it's interesting here, we'll say in this Braisa, Angaria and Mesa are lumped together. Then the owner is obligated to furnish me with a new animal. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. So Bishlam the Rav lo kasha. So what's according to Rav? Now this price contradicts our Mishnah, because our Mishnah said that if I rent an animal from Ruvain and the animal is conscripted, Angaria, that Ruvain says to me, sorry buddy, you're bad luck. Mazal chagaram harisha chalafanecha. Figure it out. Not my problem. Yet the Bryce over here says that if the animal is taken as Angaria, then what? It's equivalent to the animal dying. And everyone agrees that if the animal died, the owner is obligated to furnish a new animal. So what's going on over here? So Bishlam the Rav lo kasha. So according to Rav, it's not a contradiction. Kan ba'angaria chozeres, kan ba'angaria she'ena chozeres. So we'll say Rav has a simple distinction. Rav's distinction is, one is talking about an angaria, where the animal is going to be returned, and one is about a situation where the animal is not going to be returned. So when the animal is going to be returned, then ultimately, again, Reuven says to me, listen, I'm sorry, that's your mazel, deal with it until your animal is returned. The other case where the animal is not going to be returned, that's the equivalent of the animal dying, in which case Reuven would be obligated to furnish me with a new animal. Ela l'Shmuel kasha, but according to Shmuel, this is a problem. So the Gemara says, "V'chitim l'Shmuel nami lo kasha." Maybe he'll say, according to Shmuel, it's also not a problem. Why not? Kan shebederach halichasan nitla, kan shebederach halichasan nitla. Here's so Shmuel could say like this, the same distinction he made before. When the animal is seized and the seized animal is going in the same direction as the renter, we say, okay, just follow your animal, keep traveling, and hopefully, Meretz Hashem, at some point you'll get it back. And therefore, again, that's when the owner is not obligated to furnish me with a new animal. Versus a case where the animal is seized, and then what? Going in a different direction, that's the equivalent of the animal dying, and the owner would be obligated to give me a new animal. Tushmar says, here's the problem. Hamid diktani sefer Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer in b'derech halichasa nitla Omer lo harisha chalafanecha. V'im lav chayiv lahamid lo chamor. So also here's the problem. The Seifa says, a Seifa attributes that opinion to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Michlal lo Tanakama lo shainile, which we would infer from that Tanakama does not make this type of distinction. To which the Gemara says, Amar lecha Shmuel lav mi'i Rabbi Shimon Elazar. Okay, there's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Elazar. The Kai Kavasi under the Amri ki Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. I hold like Rabbi Shimon Elazar. And therefore, the distinction to be made is the distinction as to which direction the animal is being taken in. Okay, Ibai saying the other possibility is Kula Reb Shimon Elazar. Maybe Rabbi say this entire brayso reflects the view of Reb Shimon Elazar. V'chisrei mechsura, and there's something missing. There's a piece missing from the brayso. V'hachi katani. Here's how you have to read it. Here we go. Hasocher esachamer ve'vrika only shtatis. If I rent a donkey from Ruvain and the animal went blind or lost its mind, Omer lo harisha chalafanecha. So ultimately, again, the owner says, "Good luck." Good luck with that, right? I rented you the donkey, that's your donkey, not my problem. Not my problem. Mesa, Oshanasa Sangario. However, again, if halacha l'maisa the animal died, or it was conscripted into the service of the government, Chayiv lahamid lo chamor. Then the Ruvain, the owner, is obligated to furnish me with another donkey. Now watch this. When is that so? When is what so? Now, the case of death is pretty clear cut. The animal's dead, right? So there's nothing more to talk about. So in that case over there, the Ruvain, the owner of the animal, is obligated to furnish me with a new donkey. The Gemara says, what does it mean, that angaria? When is angaria treated like death, which would warrant furnishing a new animal from Ruvain to me? When is that so? That's when the animal ultimately again was seized and is being taken in a different direction, right? That's when it's being right. But the animal was seized and is being taken in the same direction I'm going in. Omer lo harisha chalafanecha. Ultimately, again, Reuven could say to me, "What? Dear animal, you have it, right? The rental is still there." And I say, there's one important piece over here, which is that. Oh, it's perfect. Thank you so much. Right, so we'll say, so now remember, there's one important piece in this, which is that Rashi points out over here. We'll say, what is this idea that if the animal is going in the same direction I'm going in? So let's just play this out for just a second, right? So in other words, I'm going ahead and I rented a donkey from Ruvain, right? My animal now is seized by the army. Right, the army is using it, right? So now Reb Shimon Elazar makes this distinction that if halacha l'maisa, the seized animal is being taken in the same direction I was traveling in, then Ruvain says to me, Harisha chalafanecha. Steve, thank you so much. Raishi, thank you. Steve, thank you. Mamish. Such shefa, coffee coming from everywhere. Incredible, thank you. So I'll say, so what's this pshat? What's this pshat that if the animal is being taken in the same direction? So Rashi points out something very important over here. The way it worked with Angaria was like this. I rented the donkey from Ruvain. Now it happens, the army seizes it. So the way it would work, I will say, is the army would seize my animal until it ran into the next donkey. Right? Then it would seize that animal and release my animal. So there was a system to this. In other words, take the property of private people to be used, again, for the army, for the king, until you run into the next guy, right? Release the first one. So that's why I both say the halacha is like this. That's why in a case where the seized animal is being taken in the same direction that I'm traveling in, right? Ruvain says, Harisha chalafanecha, calm down. You're going to go ahead and get your animal back, right? It's going to come back to you. And therefore, again, don't worry about it. So as long as I'm traveling in the same direction as the army, we're good to go. Now, obviously, if the army is going south and I'm going north, then it's as if the animal is dead to me. Right, then it's of no use, no consequence. Reb Shimon Elazar. We'll say top of 79a. Reb Shimon Elazar. Omer. Reb Shimon Elazar said, "In b'derech chilucha nitla, Omer lo harisha chalafanecha, ve'im lo chayiv lamid lo chamor." Because Reb Shimon Elazar said, also as we just mentioned, if the seized animal is being transported and it's going in the same direction that I'm traveling in, so Reuven says, "Look, harisha chalafanecha, go figure it out." Ve'im lo, but if not, chayiv lamid lo chamar. Then ultimately, again, If not, then Reuven is obligated to go ahead and bring me another donkey. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows. We'll say 79a, 4 lines down from the top. Umi matzis mukmus like Rabbi Shimon Elazar. Now, both say, does it make sense to set this up like Rabbi Shimon Elazar? Vaha katani reisha, but yet look at the reisha. Hasocher esachamer ve'evrika. Oh, shenishtatisa. So we'll say if I rented a donkey and ultimately it went blind, we'll just go with the first opinion of Hevrika. It went blind. Oh, nishtatita. Or it went crazy. Omer lo, haresha chalafanecha. Ultimately, again, the owner could say, listen, here's your donkey. I rented you a donkey. The donkey's right there. It's the same exact donkey. Deal with it. The Gemara says, "Ve'ilu Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer hasocher sacham." So, but yet Rabbi Shimon Elazar himself said the following: "Hasocher as hacham or lir kov alel." I'll say, if I went ahead and rented a donkey to go ahead and ride on it, lir kov alel ve'vrika, and now the donkey went ahead and became blind. Or the donkey lost its mind. Chayiv lahamid lo chamar. Then Reuven is obligated to furnish me another donkey. So I will say, how can you set up the brisa according to the opinion of Shimon Elazar? If Shimon Elazar disagrees with a fundamental piece of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if I rented a donkey and the donkey went crazy or the donkey became blind, it's my problem. It's the renter's problem, right? Reuven, the owner, could say, what do you want? Here's the donkey. Yet Shimon Elazar himself says that if you rent a donkey to ride on it and it goes blind or it loses its mind, the owner is obligated to furnish me another donkey. So it contradicts the Mishnah. The Raisa, Amra Barafuna, Lirkov ala Shaini. No. I'll say there's a big difference. It's actually fascinating. In Rabbi Shimon Elazar's case that we just mentioned, I rented the donkey for what purpose? To ride on it. See, Rabbi say there's a difference when you're renting a donkey for transport, transport of goods, versus renting a donkey for the purpose of riding on it yourself. What's that distinction? So the Gemara, look at Rashi, top Rashi on Ayin Testament Dal 79. There, Kov Shaini, Shema Tipol Tachtav Begesher, Osha Tashlichenu Ba'achas Hapisasim. Sorry. So listen now, watch this. Very big difference. When I make it clear that I'm renting a donkey to ride on it, so in that case, I don't really need a lot from my donkey. But what I do need from my donkey is I need it to have vision, right? And I need it to be of sound mind. Otherwise, again, if either of those two things are missing, that is obviously going to be a danger for me to go ahead and ride on that donkey. So Rabbi Shimon says like this: if I said to Reuven, I'm renting a donkey from you to ride on it, right, to ride on it, then halacha l'maisa, again, it's clear that what? It's clear that halacha l'maisa, I need it to have sight, I need it to be a sound mind. Therefore, if it's missing either of those two things, it is clear that halacha l'maisa, Reuven is obligated to give me a new donkey. Now, we'll say, on the other hand, halacha l'maisa, if I'm renting a donkey to transport goods, even if that donkey loses its vision, it's still technically usable, even if it loses its mind. Why? Because we say when you go ahead and you rent a donkey to transport items, so remember again, halacha l'maisa, you're leading that donkey. So because you are leading it, therefore halacha l'maisa, even if it's not 100%, halacha l'maisa, it'll still work. Amra barafuna lirkov lashani. Amra papa uklei schuchis kilir kov ale adami. Now this is interesting. When you are transporting glass utensils, so transport of glass utensils are the equivalent of renting it to ride on it. In other words, I was saying that the transport, because glass is fragile, so glass requires we'll call it a fully intact or fully healthy donkey. So renting a donkey to transport glass is the same as renting a donkey ultimately again to ride on it. So we'll say, so a very interesting distinction as comes out, that as much as in general the Mishnah says that if I rent a donkey from Reuven and the donkey goes blind or the donkey loses its mind, so I have no recourse. Reuven says, Harei shachal lefanecha. If I rented the donkey and I explicitly articulated that I'm renting it for riding purposes or I'm renting it to transport glass, in those circumstances, halacha l'maisa, if the donkey does go blind or if the donkey goes there and loses its mind, I would be entitled to a new donkey from Reuven. Fascinating. All right, let's go weiter. Okay, let's go back to Amar Rabba. Amar Rabba Rafuna, Amar Rav. Here we go. Hasocher Sachamer there Kavala Umesa Mesala Bechatzi Adarach. This is a very interesting case. I go ahead and I rent a donkey to travel from Baltimore to New York. Okay, now what happens? The animal dies in Delaware. Sometimes that traffic is so intense that your mom is just you're gonna plot, right? So what happens? So the animal dies in Delaware, halfway along the journey. So we'll say, so now what's the halacha? No sin lo scharo shel chatzi adarach ve'ein lo alav ela taromes. So we'll say ultimately I have an obligation to go ahead and pay Ruvain for half the journey. So let's say for example, the donkey rental was $500. To rent a donkey to transport goods from Baltimore to New York, donkey dies in Delaware, let's assume that's a halfway point. I'm obligated to go ahead and pay Ruvain $250. Okay? The Gemara says, Ve'ein lo alav ela taromes. I will say, and again, I don't really have, the renter, I can't be brigis with, in other words, or I should say differently. Ve'ein lo alav ela taromes means I have the right to be brigis, but I don't really have any claims. In other words, so it turns out that Ruvain rented me a weak donkey. Okay? So I could be brigis with him, but I don't really have any other claims. I have to pay half of my rental fee, and that's it. So Gemara says, 1 second. What's the case? So we'll say, so now, if it's easy to rent a donkey, in other words, if donkey rentals are readily available, so it's fine, donkey died in Delaware, no problem. I'll just go to the Delaware donkey rental depot and, go ahead and, rent a new donkey, right? There's a little bit of a tirch, I have to reload my stuff, but it's fine, it's not a big deal. So we'll say, so then, again, pay the $250, which represents half of the rental fee, right? Load up your stuff on the new donkey and Shalom Yisrael. There's nothing more to talk about. So the Gemara says, Taromis ma'avedete, idelo shchiach lagure. If on the other hand, it is not easy to find a new donkey rental, then the Gemara says, Baile meisavle. Then the truth is, Reuven should be obligated to furnish me a new donkey. In other words, if it's not easy to find a new donkey, then halacha lamaisa, I could be more than just brigis. I have a claim. I now have this merchandise in Delaware. I need to get it from Delaware to New York. What's going on? What am I going to do? To which the Gemara says, Li'olam delo shchiach lagure. In reality, we're talking about a place where when the rented donkey dies in Delaware, it is not easy to find another rental. So we'll say, so now here's the shaila. If it's not easy to find another rental, then really we should say that Reuven is obligated to furnish me a new donkey, and Allah I shouldn't owe him anything. So, but yet I have to pay half of the rental fee. Why? The Gemara says, "Umishum damar." This is so fascinating because Reuven could say to me, "Ilu ba'is lemesiat hacha lav agris ba'ilemasav." He'll say, "This is such an incredibly Jewish answer. This is incredible." He'll say, "So Reuven could say to me, listen, you're right. The donkey died midway, but think about it this way. If your intended destination was Delaware, you would have made it there already." So you hear this? Right? You hear what's happening over here? Right? So again, just to be clear on the case, I rent a donkey from Reuven to get from Baltimore to New York. Okay? It dies midway in Delaware. The Brisa says, or I should say Rabbah said, I'm obligated to pay Reuven $250, half of the rental fee. But and by the way, we're talking about a case where it's not easy to find another donkey. So now I'm kind of stuck. So if I'm kind of stuck, why am I obligated to pay Reuven half of the rental fee? Because Reuven could say, you only have a problem because you wanted to go to New York. But had you wanted to get to Delaware, had that been your destination, you would have been here. There's like a billboard like this. There's like a billboard like this, right? If you lived here, you would be home already, right? Right? Something like that. Well, yeah, you would be home already, right? So as I say, the idea, if you wanted to get to Delaware, you would have been here already. So therefore, Reuven says, the problem is you. The problem is you. Your destination was New York, but had your destination been Delaware, you would have been here already. So now what does that mean? What does that mean deep down? What that means at the end of the day is Reuven saying, look, it's not like you didn't get anywhere. Right, you got somewhere, right? So I got it. You didn't make it to New York, but you did make it along halfway of your journey. And I will say, there's an incredible yisod in this. Sometimes in life we set out on a journey, and we don't get to our destination. we don't get to our destination. So a lot of times in life we think that if you don't arrive at your intended destination, then the journey is a failure. But the Gemara says it's not true. Sometimes I will say, we set destinations, and you never know if the destination you set yourself is the right destination or not. And sometimes, interestingly enough, the place where you wind up is often the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to get to on the journey, right? I put in for myself New York. It ended up I got to Delaware. Sometimes that's because that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually wants me to be. There's a beautiful Gemara, Masechah Sukkah, the Gemara, the phrase, no longer Gemara, but the phrase is, Ragloi debar inish inin arvo in bay. A person's legs are his guarantors. Lamakom de mispakish sham avidano. So where you're supposed to be, that's where they bring you. In other words, we set destinations for ourselves in life, and sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, that's nice, I need you to be somewhere else. And He puts us where He needs us to be. So sometimes I will say in life, when you don't reach your intended destination, you have to be careful with this, because sometimes I don't reach my intended destination because I didn't try hard enough. But I will say we've all had circumstances in life where I tried hard enough. I really did. But for whatever the reason, I'm not getting to my destination. Just know about say that's not a fail. That's not a fail. Sometimes that's just because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs you to be in the place where you are and not in the place where you want to be. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be in Delaware and He doesn't want you to be in New York. So just know that in life, when you don't reach that final destination, lav dafka that it's a fail. Just sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs me to be elsewhere. All right, let's go back there. So the Gemara says, "Heichi dami." Well, what's the case? We're not finished. Heichi dami. So let's go back for a second. I'll say. So now I rented this donkey from Ruvain. Right? So if I just rented from him chamer stam, just the stam donkey, and then my donkey died in Delaware, so Ruvain should be obligated to give me a new donkey just in general. I'll say, right? Because again, I rented from Ruvain. I'll say it's interesting. I rented from Ruvain donkey services. Donkey services to get from Baltimore to New York. Now, when this donkey died in Delaware, Reuven should be obligated to give me a new donkey. If on the other hand, I will say, I rented this specific donkey, then what should be the halacha? Then I will say, what should happen? Okay, so now, when that donkey dies, what I should be able to do is as follows. I should be able to assess the value of the carcass, sell it off, and use those proceeds to buy a new donkey. Now again, to be clear, the donkey is still going to belong to Reuven. Still going to belong to Ruvain. But Lamaisa, because I rented this donkey, that means to a certain degree as the renter, I have control over this donkey. So okay, take the carcass, sell it off, use the proceeds to buy a new donkey. Lo tzricha b'she'in b'damei likach. We're talking about a case where I'll say where there's not enough value in the carcass to purchase a new donkey. I say, okay, so fine. So let me sell off the carcass. I'm the renter. Let me sell off the carcass and use the proceeds to rent a new donkey. No. Rav l'tamei da'amarav lo mechalinan karna. So Rabbi say this is very interesting. Rav is of the opinion, Rabbi say that halacha l'maisa, as the renter, so as if I rented this donkey, as much as I have the rights to now when the donkey dies, take the proceeds of the carcass and use it to buy a new animal, I can't use the proceeds to rent a new animal. Why not? What's the logic? Because Rabbi say, remember, if I take the proceeds to rent a new animal, when the rental is over, what is Reuven, the owner of the animal, left with? Nothing. So I will say, so as a renter, I can't do anything that totally, not devours, but that totally uses up, like totally uses up the Karen, the principal. And therefore taking the proceeds of the carcass and using it for a rental fee, that totally uses up the Karen, the principal, and that as a renter, I'm not allowed to do. But take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Lo mechalin an karna. It's right across from Tosfos Ve'im. So Tosfos says as follows. Rashi says as follows. Rashi says, Lo mechalin an karna, v'chitna b'masnisin chayv lahamid lo chamor acher, hecha demesa, ba'od bebeis habaylim, the mosif lo keach chamor, v'lo kalya karna, v'ala mochra, u'lehotzi adam liska acheres lo. So I'll say, this is very important. So in a case of chamor zeh, right, chamor zu, when I go ahead and I'm renting, this donkey. So as a renter, what that means is I have control over this donkey for the duration of the rental, which means that even if it dies, I have the ability to go ahead and sell it off in order to go ahead and purchase a new donkey. I can't sell it off to rent. And use the proceeds for rental, because then the owner is left with no principal at the end of the rental duration. Rav l'tamei dama Rav lo mechalin karna. Right, Rav holds right. So the itmar, here we go. Hasor chasachamar umeisa. If I rent a donkey and the donkey dies halfway through the journey, Amarav im yesh bedameh likach yikach. The liskar al yiskar. So Rav says, Rabbi said that Allah, if I rent a donkey and the donkey right from Baltimore to New York and the donkey dies in Delaware midway of the journey, so I could take the carcass, sell it off, and use the proceeds to buy a new donkey. But I can't use the proceeds for a rental. Shmuel says, Af liskar yiskar. Shmuel says, no, you can even use the proceeds for a rental. What are they arguing about? Rav savar lo mechalinan karna. So Rav holds that halacha l'maisa, you can't go ahead. The renter doesn't have the right to fully consume or to fully use up the principal. Or Shmuel amar mechalinan karna. Shmuel says, no, that's not true. That's not true in a case of a rental. Again, we'll say when you rent it, whatever gets used, gets used. So basically, when the kasha, yavash ha'ilan o niktzat. So this is the interesting case over here. Rashi points out this is talking about a case of mashkanta d'sura. So remember again, mashkanta d'sura back in our Izu Neshech days. Mashkanta d'sura was the following situation. I lend $1,000 to Ruvain, right? What mashkanta d'sura did was Ruvain gives me a collateralized piece of land. Now I use that land. What we do is we assess the value of that land at a certain amount per year. And what ends up happening is essentially the loan is diminished by a certain amount every year, reflective of the usage of the land. So let's say, for argument's sake, I lend Ruben $1,000, and let's say again, the usage of the land is worth $100 a year. I use the land for 10 years, and after 10 years, what's the halacha? Debt is paid up. That's called the mashkanta d'sura. So now let's say in this case over here, Ruben collateralized the tree. Right, and what happens? He gave me a tree, so I'm getting the fruit of the tree for $100 a year for 10 years. Fine. Yavash ha'ilan o niktzas. We'll say what happens if the tree went ahead and dried up, or for that matter, again, it was cut down. It was cut down. So what's halacha? Shnei masurim bo. Neither of us, both me, Ruvain, me, Shmuel Silber, the lender, right, and Ruvain, the borrower, neither of us could go ahead and do anything with the tree. Now, we'll say now, why is that? Why is that? So remember again, I can't cut it down. I can't cut it down and use it for wood, right? And sell it off for wood. Why not? Because then that means Ruvain, the actual owner, the Karen, is no longer there. The principal is gone. Ruvain can't do it because for the next couple of years it's collateralized to me. So neither of us could do anything with that tree. So what do we do? So the Gemara says, Kate said, Yasa, Yelakach bo karka v'hu ochel peros. So go ahead, I will say, go ahead and what? Sell it off, use the money to go ahead and purchase another piece of land. I, the lender, will go ahead and enjoy it for the duration of the collateralized term, and then Reuven will get it back. The Gemara said, one second. Here's the problem, we'll say, what's going to happen? Yovel's going to come. Now we'll say, what happens when Yovel comes? Property goes back to its original owner. So now we're using the proceeds of this collateralized tree, right? We're going to go ahead, sell it, buy another piece of land, and that's very nice. So I'll use it for the duration of the loan, then it goes back to Ruvain. Here's the problem. It goes back to Ruvain for some amount of time, but then once Yovel comes, it goes back to its original owner. So this is a mechanism which then allows for the total usage of the using up of the principal, because Ruvain's going to be left with nothing once Yovel comes. How are you allowed to do this? So we'll say this is fascinating. What are we talking about over here? We're talking about over here where we buy. The sale is for 60 years. 60 years. Then we'll say, now what does that do? The Amarav Chista Amarav Katina Minayin Lamocher Sadeh L'Shishim Shana She'ino Chozeres B'Yovel. We'll say this is fascinating. How do you know that if you sell something for a duration of 60 years, that Yovel does not impact it? So the Gemara says, She'ne'emar va'aretz lo simacher lismisus. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity. Mi she'ein sham yovel nitzmeses, yesh sham yovel eino nitzmeses. So also, what does that mean? This comes to include that a sale, that if it weren't for yovel, it would be eternal. But now that there's yovel, it's not eternal. Yotza sazuz comes to exclude a case, sha'af api she'ein sham yovel eino nitzmeses. So we'll say if you have a case of a sale which is not eternal even without yovel. What's an example of a case that's not eternal without yovel? A sale for 60 years. So a sale for 60 years says the shelf life of the sale is 60 years, which means even if there is no yovel, ultimately again, the sale is not eternal. Sof. Okay, so I'll say that's fine. But at the end of 60 years, so again, remember, we're talking about this specific case. I lent Reuven $1,000. He gave me a tree. The tree produces $100 worth of fruit a year. I'm going to have it for 10 years. In year number 5, what happens? The tree dries up. So I can't chop it down for wood. Reuven can't chop it down for wood. So what do we do? What is it going to suggest? Sell it. Use the proceeds to buy another piece of land, and then again, I could use it for the duration of the collateralized term, and then it goes back to Reuven. Here's the problem: it goes back to Reuven, but then at some point in time, it'll go back for Yovel to its owner. In which case, the Karen, the principal, is used up. We just said you can't use up the principal. So the Gemara says, 60 years, Yovel won't impact it. Okay, that's fine. So you've gotten around the Yovel issue. But it's still still a sale for 60 years. So at the end of 60 years, it's going to go back to its original owner. In which case, once again, the Karen is getting used up. We're talking about over here in a case where Yovel is not in effect. I remember again, in order for Yovel to be in effect, you need Rov Yoshveh Allah, the majority of Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. Rashi points out over here, actually. Rashi says, the Ma'asken B'Zan Yovel V'lo Kali Kana. Okay, fine. So the Gemara says as follows: this seems to be clear. Because if you thought that there's talking about a situation, a scenario where Yovel does apply. The Gemara says, and again, if you think that it is permitted for the user to use up the keren of the principal, then Abba say, if that's the case, not the cheletzi, when the tree initially dries up, just chop it up into wood, and divide up the wood. Imishumha lo kasher. We'll say the first wide line on the bottom. If that's your taina, that's not a good question. Why not? Zimnin the shalmu shani mashkanta mikame yovel. Because we'll say sometimes it could happen that ultimately again the years of the usage of the collateralized property could end before yovel. Inami. The other possibility is the matule zuze uparakle arba v'chamish mikame yovel. Or sometimes we'll say ultimately again Reuven has the ability to prepay the loan. Most of them again we spoke about this. We saw this in Ezun Neshech about the ability to prepay a loan if you need to. So we'll say, so bottom line, what comes out according to this, just introduced to a new idea. So first of all, we'll say this concept that Allah Lamaisa, when you rent something, even if part of the rental was actualized, but part of it remained unactualized, the ability to be on the hook for part of the rental payment. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different moving parts with halachas like that, but still that concept applies. So we'll say furthermore, this interesting idea ultimately of machlokes Rav and Shmuel, which is what? Which is that halacha lemaisa, when you go ahead and you rent something and then the rental doesn't go well. So remember again, technically speaking, the ability of the renter to take the item and sell it and use the proceeds to purchase something new to be able to go ahead and finish up the rental duration. So everyone agrees you could take the proceeds. Let's say again, I rented the donkey died. I could take the proceeds and buy a new donkey, because then at the end of the rental duration, Reuven, the owner, gets back his donkey. The shaila is, can you use the proceeds to pay for another rental? So that's the machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Shmuel says yes. Rav says no, because as much as the renter has the right to use the proceeds to purchase a new donkey, he doesn't have the right to use the proceeds to rent a new donkey. Why? Because that will effectively mean that he's totally using up the keren, the principal which belongs to him. So that's an outstanding machlokes. So let's go back there. Post another interesting case. Turn our on. So we'll say, watch this. I rent a boat from Reuven, and the boat sinks mid-journey. Boat sinks a little problem, right? It's been a tough day, right? Reuven, right? And the boat sinks mid-journey. Rabbi Nassan says, Im Nassan lo yitov, Im lo Nassan lo yitem. if I've already paid the wage, if I've already paid the rental, so I can't get my money back. But if I haven't paid the rental, I don't have to pay. I don't have to pay. So the Gemara says, okay, so what's going on over here? So the Gemara says, hey, dummy, what's the case? What's the case? So Rabbi say, if it's a case of where I rented dafka this boat, in other words, I rented a specific boat from Ruvain, right? And yayin stam. And Rabbi say again, I'm transporting. In other words, I did not make up with Ruvain which specific cargo I'm transporting. I'm just transporting cargo. In this case, it's wine. In other words, I didn't identify these 15 barrels. I just said I'm transporting wine. Then the Gemara says, Im nasan amilo yitol. In that case, even if I went ahead and paid, why can't I get my money back? After all, nemale havli sfinta da'ana maisina chamra. I can say to Reuven, listen, I'm ready to go. I've got the cargo. Where's the boat? Where's the boat? And if Reuven can't furnish me with a new boat, and I paid already, I should get my money back. Ella besfina stam v'yayin zeh. So we'll say rather it must be a case of where Reuven is saying, I'll rent you a boat. He didn't identify a specific boat. I rent you a boat, right? But I specified the cargo to be transported. So in this case, Rabbi say, Im lo nasan amalo yitin. If I didn't pay, why shouldn't I be obligated to pay? After all, Rabbi say, Amadeis, Nema le. Reuven could say to me, Havliyahu chamra va'ana maisina. Reuven will say, listen, we wanted to transport this specific cargo, no problem. Give me the cargo, and I'll furnish you with another boat. Now, both say, now, of course, I can't do that, right? Why? Because my cargo is on the bottom of the ocean, right? It's on the bottom of the sea. So in that case, again, Reuven will say, listen, that's on you, that's not on me, pay me my wage. Amra Papa, we'll say second line from the top, 79b, what's the case? Amra Papa, lo mishkachas la ela besfina zu v'yayin zeh. Rather, I will say, tell me the following case. Here was the contract. I rented from Reuven. Reuven, I'm renting this boat. So we identified which boat, right? And yayin zeh, to transport specific cargo. Everything's going well until mid-journey, the boat sinks. So in this case, Rabbi say, now what's the halacha? In this case, so the Maisa kind of, both of us are a little bit at a disadvantage. So I'm at a disadvantage because I contracted to go ahead and transport specific cargo, which is no longer accessible to me. Reuven went ahead and contracted for this boat. So Rabbi said, this is the case where halacha l'maisa, if I paid already, I can't get my money back. But if I didn't pay, I don't have to pay. Aval b'sfina stam, v'yayin stam. But I both say if it was a case of where I rented stam a boat, not a specific boat, but a boat from Reuven, and it was to transport general cargo, then cholkin. We would go ahead and split the fee. Rashi says over here, Ella biyayin zeh usfinazu, v'lo biyad zeh v'zeh lahashlim. Neither of us say, see, when it's this boat and this cargo, neither of us have the ability to come through on our side of the deal. Fine, good. Let's go right there. Tanabanan. Well, this is an interesting case. I rent a boat, and then I unload the contents halfway through the journey. So ultimately, you're going to pay for half of the journey, and the owner of the boat has no legal claim against me. He could be braigus. Take a look at Rashi. So we'll say what this sounds like is like this. I rent a boat to go from point A to point B. What happens? Midway through the journey, we dock and I unload my stuff. So I don't need the rest of the journey. So I'll say, so what's the halacha? The halacha is I'm obligated to pay Reuven for 50% of the journey, and Reuven has no tinus on me, no legal. He could be braigus. Why could he be braigus? Because it's not right. It's not right. You rented me for the entire journey. Now you change the terms. He can be braigus, but he doesn't have any other legal claim against him. The Gemara says, one second. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? Now both say, what's the case? If it's easy for Reuven to find a new renter, So fine. So in other words, when we dock, right? So again, we're docking midpoint. So we'll say, so again, I was supposed to go from point A to point B. We end up stopping at point C, which for the purpose of this is in the middle of A and B. Of A and B, I decide to unload my stuff. So now, if it's easy for Ruvain to find a new renter for the boat, so fine. It's annoying. But Lamaisa, why could he even be braggis with me? He's not going to lose any money. He'll just get a new renter. On the other hand, if now in point C, it's not easy to find a new renter, then what? Kule agra by shalume. Then in reality, I should have to pay the full rental fee. Right, because remember again, Ruvain's stuck. You decide. By the way, I just want to tell you something. Do you know where this comes up all the time? All the time. Again, I don't know now, but you're taking a car service, taking a taxi, right, to get from one place to another. You get stuck in traffic. Forget it. I'll walk. I'll get out and walk. So now I'm saying, okay, I didn't take the full service. I want to get out here and go. So let's say, so remember again, so now it's a little bit different because the taxi driver is now stuck in traffic, right? He can't get anywhere. So in this case over here, I hired Ruvain's boat to go from point A to point B. We stop in the middle of Metzia. I say, you know what, I'm going to get off here. I'm going to take all my stuff with me. So now the halacha is I have to pay him half. So Bryce said I have to pay him half the wage. Rabbi said Bryce said I have to pay him half the wage. So what's the case? If it's easy for Ruvain to find a new renter, okay, I got it. It's annoying, but fine. He'll get the rest of the fee to get then from C to B. But if he can't find a new renter, right, and now again he's stuck at port C, and so then halacha l'maisa, I should be on the hook for the entire fee. Ella, Slimar says, Liolam de kamashkach lagura. In reality, it's easy for Ruvain to find another renter. So therefore, even now we made this stop in the middle, and I unloaded my stuff. At the end of the day, Ruvain can find another renter. If that's the case, Ella amai isle taromes. So one second, if that's the case, then why could Ruvain even be braggis with me? Right? What's the braggisness about? Why could he even be upset? What's the big deal? Right? He's going to get another renter. Mishum rafsasa disfinta. To which the Gemara says, ultimately why? Because halacha l'maisa, I will say, every time you load and unload a boat, there's wear and tear. So Ruvain wasn't anticipating me unloading my stuff at port C. So because of that now, I'm unloading my stuff. Someone else is going to come on the boat, load on their stuff. There's additional wear and tear. So for that, Ruvain is upset. I didn't plan or I didn't bargain for this additional wear and tear. One second. Well, one second, I'll say. If that's true, then now as a result of me cutting the journey short, pulling off my stuff, even though again Ruvain will find a new renter, but if there really is additional wear and tear on the boat, then I will say that is a monetary claim. That's a monetary claim. And if that's a monetary claim, then Ruvain should have that against me. Elamai taromes, we're supposed to listen to this. Rather, you're right. The Gemara says, no. Elamai, parka, the Elamai parka, the parka latone begave. The Gemara says, no. There's a new case. We'll say it's not the pshat that really I'm unloading and leaving the ship mid-journey. Rather, what's happening? Right? The parka latone begave. Rashi says, the parka latone begave. Bechansi aderech hosef laseis bachavilos shahayo lo l'sham v'uhisna metchila lekach litin besocha kasher yirtze v'aschar lefi cheshbon hamasos v'aderech hilchach nosin l'schar tosef v'samasoy shachatzi aderech. So listen, I watch this. The Gemara says, what's the case? The case is like this. This is actually fascinating. I rented a boat from Ruvain. Here's the deal, right? Ruvain, I'm renting the boat to carry as much cargo as the boat could carry. Okay, fine, no problem. We load up the boat in port A, right, to go to port B. In the middle of the journey, I say, you know what, let's make a stop at port C. I have some stuff there. So we stop at port C, we load up the stuff. So the Gemara said, just to be clear, I am in agreement with the terms of my contract. Because what my contract said was what? I could put as much stuff on the boat as what? As the boat could carry. So I'm not overloading the boat. We just made a stop to get some stuff at port C. Okay, so the Gemara says, so fine. Elamai tarumas. So then why could Ruvain be braggis with me? In other words, I'm not. So I'll say. So now the Gemara is saying, I'm not unloading the boat and saying, sorry, bye Ruvain, I'm getting off over here. Rather, again, we're still going to port B. We made a detour to port C to load up the boat, which I'm allowed to. I could put as much cargo. So why could Ruvain be braggis? Mishum shinui daita. So I'll say this is incredible. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, this is not really what I had in mind. In other words, I assumed, Reuven says, I assumed that when you contracted me to take you from port A to port B, then I said, what we're doing, we're going direct from port A to point B. Now you said you want to make a detour. I understand it's in the terms of your contract, but it's not what I thought. In other words, I thought we're making just a straight trip so I can get back and forth and I have a whole timeline. Now there's a detour. Again, I and the renter, it's within my rights. It's within my rights. In other words, again, I can make this stop at port C and load up the stuff. But Reuven has the right to be breigus. You have the right to be breigus. Why? Because this is not what I had in mind. No legal recourse, but that could be breigus. Inami la'ashla yisera. The other possibility is that no, it is a little bit of a change. Why? You need additional ropes. Now, the way it worked was like this. Boats often traveled along channels. Now, by channels, you have to be careful about not getting grounded, right? Because the sides are shallow. So what would they do? It's interesting. So what they would do is in these shipping straits, so they would have people on the side who essentially would pull the boats along, keeping them in the deeper water. The heavier the boats, right, the more work is involved in keeping the boats. So now, when I come along and I load up more cargo in port C, now Reuven's going to need additional rope or heavier rope in order to keep. So again, so there is, it's not enough of a material change to go ahead and trigger any type of legal action. But Lamaisa, it's annoying. It's annoying, right? We didn't plan for this. You didn't tell me about this, right? And now I need more rope. Now again, I'm going to get home later. So therefore, again, yesh shalav taromis. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Tanabanan. Hasocher sachamar lirkov aleh. So Rabbi says, it's actually an interesting case over here. I rent a donkey to ride on it. Right? So Rabbi says, so now again, I'm renting a donkey from Reuven, and I'm renting it again for the purpose of riding. So what's the halacha? Socher maniach alav kisuso, velignuso mizonosav shal osayom. So I, the renter, so Rabbi say, in addition to me sitting on the donkey, I'm allowed to put other things on the donkey. What am I allowed to put on the donkey? I'm allowed to put on there my clothing, right? Kslignosa, my flask. Can't go anywhere without your flask, right? So I can put on there my flask, and my food for the journey. Right? So this is the stuff I'm allowed to put on my donkey. I will say now, again, we're talking about a case over here where I rented the donkey, but the donkey also comes with a driver, or a leader, right? So I'm riding on it, but someone's pulling the donkey. So I will say, so again, there's a limit to what I'm allowed to load up on the donkey. So I can put on my clothing, my flask, the food I need for the journey. If I try to put on there any more, the donkey driver, who may or may not be the owner himself, is allowed to say, no, too much, overloading the donkey. Chamar, what about the donkey driver himself? So the donkey driver himself, he could put on the donkey, sorim v'teben, that's the animal feed, mizonosav shal osayom, and the donkey driver's food for that day. Mikan ve'elach socher ma'akev alav. But I will say but that's all the donkey driver is allowed to put on it. After that, the renter is allowed to say, enough. So what's the case over here? Hechidami. Either shiach lemizban chamer nami la'akev. Now I will say, what's the case? Now here's what's interesting I will say is, the fundamental distinction between the donkey driver and the renter. The renter is allowed to put on the donkey all of the food he needs for that entire journey. The donkey driver can only put on the donkey what? The amount of food he needs for that day. So why the distinction? What's the case? So we'll say if food is readily available, then halacha l'maisa, why is the renter allowed to go ahead and put on there the food for the entire journey? The donkey driver can say, no, you can put on food for one day and that's it. And if it's not easy to find food, Socher nami lo li'akev. Then the donkey driver should be able to put on there the food he needs for the entire journey. Amra papa lo tzricha t'shchiach lamitrach u'lemizben me'avna la'avna. We'll say, what's the case? The case over here is where you can find food every day, but it's a tircha. You have to go to the market, you have to run here, you have to run there. So food is available, but not easily. You have to seek it out. Chamar, so we'll say it is the derech of the donkey driver to go ahead and run place to place finding food. So because he could do that and it is available, it's a little bit of a headache, therefore he could only put on there the food for one day. Socher, lo lav darchi l'minchachal l'mizban. Notice that ultimately, again, for the renter, it's not the derech of the renter to have to run around looking for food every single day. Therefore, the renter is allowed to go ahead and place the entire journey's worth of food on the dunk. We'll say we'll stop over here for today. We'll leave the last piece. We'll say shkoyach. Great job, everyone. Great job. Baruch Hashem, we're all caught up. Shkoyach, what a week. What a week, Baruch Hashem. Looking forward to a beautiful Shabbos. How do I continue learning together? Shkoyach. Everyone on Zoom. Good Shabbos, everyone. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.